Welcome to the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing podcast, your source for real-world strategies focused on creating long-term wealth, cash flow, and financial freedom through real estate. Through guidance, tips, and stories of highly successful real estate investors and thought leaders, we provide you the tools to succeed and reach the lifestyle you always wanted. And now your host, Dwayne Clark.
Well, welcome to today's podcast. I'm very pleased to have our guest, Greg Dickerson. He is a serial entrepreneur, real estate investor, and developer. And over the past 20 years, he has bought and developed over $200 million in real estate, built and renovated hundreds of custom homes and commercial buildings, and started surprisingly 12 different companies from the ground up. Greg is an expert on all topics real estate development and entrepreneurship, and has spoken at real estate investing conferences and events around the country. And he's also been a guest speaker on Fox Business News with Neil Cavuto and the Dave Ramsey Show, and regularly interviewed on some of the top real estate investing business podcasts today. I want to have the pleasure and thank you, Greg Dickerson, for joining our show today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me here. It's good to be with you.
I appreciate that. So I understand that you're heading and looking at some sites today. You said it was in Richmond, Virginia?
Yeah, so I live in Charlottesville, but we do projects all up and down the southeast coast. So today I'm in Richmond and scouting some projects here and looking for some sites for hotel development and a few other things. So that's kind of what my day looks like day to day. I hop in the car and my office is the road. So
absolutely.
if I have one of these, I just pull over and we dial it in, and I just go from site to site, checking on the projects, looking for new projects, things like that.
Oh, perfect. So your background, you mentioned you're a serial entrepreneur, and you're doing mainly development now. Would you mind giving us just a little insight of your background and how you kind of transition to what you're doing now?
Yeah, so it's mainly development. Like I said, I work out of my house, and I'm on the road looking at new sites and overseeing existing projects that are in the process. And I outsource everything, and I use general contractors to build for me, and I have architects and engineers doing all the front end work. So I'm totally outsourced, leverage those assets. But excuse me, I got started in the business back in '97 as a remodeling contractor, doing small projects, handyman work, remodeling work down on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and grew that into a $30 million company in about 7 years, where we evolved from doing just small little remodel handyman projects all the way up to building custom homes, commercial buildings, developing land, doing things like that. And then the other 12 companies, so, my background is a great example of adult ADD, right? So I like to stay busy. I like to do different things. And a lot of the companies that were started along the way were ancillary and directly related to the construction industry. So I had pool, spa, landscaping company.
Wow.
I had a hurricane shutter company, electrical company, a plumbing company, a painting company. I had a couple of restaurants. I've got a restaurant background as well. And I had a gymnastics, cheerleading, trampoline school, competitive program. That was more of a community service kind of a thing. I took it nonprofit, but I just love to help people. I love to coach and mentor people. I love to grow people and grow businesses. And it's funny, somebody asked me the other day, because I do so many different things, all classes of real estate, different types of projects. Somebody asked me, what do I love the most about what I do? And for me, it's building people. It's watching people uncover their God-given talents and really cultivate that and use their gifts and their talents to their fullest, and just watch people grow and blossom. I mean, that's what I love more than anything else. Making money's great and all that, and we have to earn a living, but watching people succeed, watching people uncover their God-given talents and their untapped potential, and help them reach their full potential. That's what's fun to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just kind of like that because, this thing with the podcast here, we're just, giving out information and, and just talking with people. And it's like giving out is like the best thing you do, is like the biggest reward you can get. Also, when we had talked previously before, you had mentioned that you was also in the Navy as well. As far as building your businesses and your kind of your entrepreneurship background, did that some of that help, or kind of help, give you the background and pave the way to building your other businesses?
Probably not so much. I mean, so my dad was military. I grew up in that environment, and so I had a lot of discipline instilled in me at a very young age, and a very hard work ethic that I learned from my dad. But I'm a natural born entrepreneur. So my mom and my dad, our whole family, there are no entrepreneurs in my family tree at all. All of them were, either military or career people. And, I was just born that way and just with that fire to want to do something. So I was out at a young age, cutting grass, raking leaves, washing cars, doing whatever I could do to make a dollar. And I mean, I'd go door to door and knock on the door. So if your grass looked like it needed cutting, I had my
Mm,
lawnmower and my gas can. I'd knock on your door and offer to do it for $20, right? If it was a regular sized yard and or rake the leaves. In Florida where I grew up, it was pine needles, so those were
mhm,
easy to deal with. But they would get all over your yard,
mhm,
um, and leaves as well. So I would just do those things, and then my dad kind of taught me, how business works. He would charge me for using his lawnmower. He would take a percentage of what I made, and I had to pay for the gas that I used for the lawnmower. And even if and when I got to the point where I was driving, if I used the vehicle at all, I had to bring it back with a full tank of gas
wow.
and clean. So no matter how much gas it had in it when I borrowed it, I had to bring it back with a full tank, or I wouldn't get to use it again.
Mm,
So I learned the cost of doing business and overhead at a very young age, and so that's kind of how I started out. So that background at a young age, the work ethic, the discipline of doing what you have to do now, taking care of business first, was kind of instilled in me and ingrained in me at a very young age. I did the military thing right out of high school instead of going to college. I went in the military, and after I got out of the military, I set out to conquer the world. And I always wanted my own business. I always wanted to work for myself. I just like creating something out of nothing. I like building people, building companies, building businesses. So that's just kind of what I've done. I've had a few jobs in the restaurant world and the construction world from that time I got out of the military in 89, 90 until 97, when I've been self-employed ever since and started that first company. I had a few different jobs that I kind of bounced around a little bit in construction and real estate through that 8-year period before starting my own business. And I had a couple of my own companies on the side during that period as well, but none of them really worked out until 97, when I started that first big building company. And then everything just went from there, and I
mm,
just never looked back.
mm. So as far as moving fast forward, you say you're more focusing on the development side. Is this for like for clients, or is this for like you as a investor as well, building and owning these projects?
Yeah, so I do my own projects, and I've got some partners in different deals, and then I also do what's called fee development.
Mm,
So if somebody has a project or a piece of land and they've got everything but the ability, the technical ability, skills, and knowledge to do the project, then you can hire what's called a fee developer, and I'll come in as a fee developer, as a consultant, and I will manage the whole project and process for an individual, for you, for a fee. And that fee is dependent on what the project is, what all's entailed, how much time's involved, things like that. So most of what I do are my own projects, and then occasionally I do have some fee development projects that I do, and consulting work that I do to help people on specific projects, and in their businesses as well. I do some business consulting as well, and I still do equity investing in venture capital. So if I see a company or a business that has potential to scale, I'll come in and get involved in that at different ways. If I'm going to get involved as an owner, from an ownership and bring capital, to a company, then there's got to be an ownership interest in that. But these days, it's more of the expertise that I bring to the table with
mhm.
companies and real estate projects.
Yeah. So one thing that was very interesting that we had talked about before is your, from the building of people and the businesses, but the systems, and that's a very important as far as being successful, developing projects, maintaining projects. So as far as your construction and development projects, what are some of the systems that you kind of help develop or utilize to kind of make things more efficient? That benefit your clients and your investors.
Right. Yeah. So a system is really a process, right? So it's just documenting a process. So in a business, to create a system, you want to have a process for something that's documented so that everybody has a standard operating procedure they follow. So it's very different in a business from a procedural standpoint what that system is, and that system can be part process and part technology, or it can be a little bit of both. So you might have a CRM system that clients
Mm,
go into, and then it has an automated follow-up sequence. or a system could be how you handle a transaction from the time that contract comes in the door until it closes. So that's just a process that's mapped out. So for me in my development career, my systems are a process mapping. Is what it is. So I find a piece of land and I want to, let's say, develop a hotel, right? So we've got some $25 million hotel projects in the pipeline that we're doing ground up. So I'll identify the land, which is what I'm doing today. I'll go out and I'll look at sites. I'll get that site under contract. And once that site's under contract, then it's handed over to the civil engineers, to the architects. I've got other partners that handle the financial end. They'll put the package together, project package together to send out to our capital partners. And then, so that process is underway. And then in the interim, what I do is I follow up and follow through. So I manage the engineers, I manage the architects, I manage the general contractors putting the pricing together. And then we have third-party management firms, just like, a lot of multifamily syndicators have. They'll have a third-party management company. Hotels are kind of the same way. Office is kind of the same way. There's management companies that handle different asset classes. So I manage the professionals. I manage the managers. So my system, my process is basically it's mapped out from start to finish from the time I put a property under contract, whether it's a ground up development piece of land or whether it's an existing building that is just an existing cash flow asset, or if it's a value add, adaptive reuse, whatever it is. It starts with a contract and then it goes from there into everything else. And then I've got that process and pipeline that I manage, and I keep up with it with technology. I use Microsoft Office 365, and I just leverage technology to keep track of everything and keep all those systems in place. So for me, it's a simple spreadsheet for each project, and then everybody kind of reports in on those benchmarks. So I can manage any number of them from anywhere. And just like I'm doing right now, if there's things that we need to go over, I'll pull over, we'll do a video conference or whatever it is, we'll go over it, and then I'm off to the next thing. So that's kind of what my day looks like and how I systemize my current business.
Yeah, that's very important. I had actually started out when I was in real estate, was the house flipping business. And it was just, you're managing so much different stuff. But as, going in very new, you either get a little small course, you're trying to learn about it, and you go in there and you just pick a couple contractors and they're kind of doing their thing, and everything's kind of all over the map, and you have timelines you're trying to manage. But if you're bringing in like hard money or private capital and you have to do stuff on a certain timeline, you have to make sure that it's organized, stuff is getting done. If you have like an open house or you're setting the close and sell it to another buyer, everything's got to be organized, and that's kind of the key. And that's sometimes the biggest hurdle for most people is the organization. But your background from building all those businesses and organizing different things and becoming the success that you are, creating those systems is key. So that's the one thing that I take away from that, is that's one of the most important parts is starting any business, but especially in the real estate business.
Yeah, systems are key regardless of what you're doing. The house flipping business, whether you're a wholesaler or a house flipper, especially if you're a house flipper, I mean, it's all about systems to be able to do volume, right? You can do 10, 15, 20 a year and not really have any systems and kind of get through it. But if you want to get to the next level where you're doing 100, 200, 300 deals a year, you've got to have those systems. And, if you're flipping or building new construction spec houses, which, I did a lot of that in my career, we do 30 or 40 of them a year. And then we would have another 15 to 20 rehabs going on at the same time. It was all about systems. And when I say system, again, it's a process, right? So, and procedures. So the way to systemize a flipping or a house building business, it starts with the plans and specifications, right? So if you're doing a volume business, pretty much every house that you're flipping is going to be the same thing, from paint color schemes to the tile that you use, to the roofing that you use, the cabinets, the countertops, light fixtures, plumbing fixtures. I mean, all those things can be systemized. And what I mean by systemized is you put it down on a piece of paper, which is called your selections, which is also called submittals in the commercial construction world. And as a builder, I had my set of plans. All of my specifications were on the plans. So every single thing that went into that house, all of my spec sheets, all of my submittals were all on the plans. So I'd hand that to, when I had my building company, I'd give that to my project manager, and they knew everything that went into that house. Nowadays, I hire general contractors to work for me, and the way that I keep problems from happening is I have all of my specifications, all of my selections, all of my details all laid out, and they're all in the plans, they're all in the submittals. So there is no question exactly what I'm looking for, when and how. And that's really the key. When you look at any organization, The people are only as good as the clear direction that you give them, right? So you can put somebody in place, they can be the best in the world, the most talented individual, but if you don't give them an expectation of what you want, a very clear expectation of what you want in a defined amount of time, and then measure that, it's not going to do you any good. All the systems in the world won't do you any good without that clear direction. So what you have to do first and foremost is you got to give clear direction, exactly what you expect and when, in no uncertain terms. And then you've got to measure that performance and have accountability, right? And a lot of people say, well, what's accountability? How do I hold somebody accountable? That's simply saying, I asked you to do X by X, and it did or didn't happen. So here's the consequence. And the consequence in commercial construction world can be a penalty, right? There's penalty clauses. In the house flipping residential world, it could be that we're not going to work together anymore. If it's a continual thing in your company, it could be, a performance standard that's, look, this is your first strike. We're going to give you 2 more, shots. And if it doesn't work, we're either going to move you to another position, or, this situation just isn't going to work out. And as leaders, everybody looks at the corporate pyramid structure, right? You got this pyramid, and on top is the CEO. And then you have your, everybody else down underneath that, president, CEO, founder, whatever, right? I've always flipped that pyramid upside down. As leaders, we have to give the organization everything it needs to be successful: tools, training, systems, and support. But more important than all of that, the clear direction and no uncertain terms, exactly what's expected and when. Then we have to measure that performance and hold people accountable, reward great performance, redirect poor performance. And if you have poor performance in your business, in your projects, in your life, anywhere, if something is not going the way that you want it, you got to look at yourself first and go, okay, wait a minute. Did I lay out everything that needed to happen for success? I'm the leader. I'm the leader of my house. I'm the leader of my family. I'm the leader of my company. I'm the leader of my clients. I mean, in this business, you, me, anybody in this business, we're leaders. We're leading the lenders to a closing. We're leading the title companies to a closing. We're leading our clients to a closing. We're leading our customers that we're selling to a closing. We are leaders, whether people realize it or not, know it or not. That's what we do all day, every day. So we have to give everybody else around us exactly what they need to be successful. So if something doesn't work out, 99% of the time, you can trace that back to the leader. We didn't give them what they needed to be successful, whether it's the system, whether it's the expectation, whether it's the conditions, or we just didn't hire or bring in the right individual to begin with. And then that goes back to the very beginning where you're recruiting, hiring, and training. You got to hire winners and coach them to success, right? And hire the person, train the skill, right? To a certain degree, right? You can have a great attitude and be the quickest learner in the world. You're not going to put him in an open heart surgery situation, right? You need somebody who's got that skill. Exactly. But in our business, in real estate, almost anybody can learn real estate. Almost anybody can learn house flipping. Like you said, there's plenty of courses and all that. So if you've got somebody with the right attitude and they just need a little bit of the education, well, you can teach them that. You can't teach somebody attitude. You can't teach somebody, positive thinking, sense of urgency, resourcefulness, resilience, determination, perseverance. Those are the things you cannot teach. That's got to be in somebody. You can help people develop that, but when you're on a growth pattern, you got to find people that are winners, people that want to get things done, that want to achieve success. And that's what I always say is I use sports analogies a lot, right? And in business and companies that I've built, I always tell everybody, look, we're a team trying to get to the Super Bowl. So I'm going to find a quarterback who can throw touchdowns, and I'm going to put that guy in position and let him throw touchdowns or her throw touchdowns. The last thing I'm going to do is hire a professional that can throw touchdowns and not let them do it, or put them somewhere else and cross train and do this or that, right? You find, it's aces in places. You find champions, you put them in the right position so that they are successful, so the organization is successful. You build that team around everybody to support. You hire your weaknesses. You hire people that are smarter and better than you. You hire people that know things that you don't, and you put them in a position. You let them make mistakes. You let them make decisions, and you coach them to success. And that's how you grow an organization. And that's where most of the organizations fail in terms of growing, is because they either are afraid to let people make mistakes, or they're afraid to let people make decisions, or they just can't let go. And they just want to do it all themselves. And, hey, that's great. If that's what somebody wants to do. But if you want to grow an organization, you got to find champions. You got to let them make mistakes. You got to let them make decisions, and you got to, coach them to success. You got to give them that clear direction, that systems, and you got to have those accountability sessions in a positive way. It doesn't mean that you're chewing somebody out when they mess up. It just means you sit down and say, look, we were looking for this result. We wanted a touchdown. We were on the 1 yard line and we didn't get it. Let's look at why we didn't get it and let's fix that. I don't care who did what. Let's just fix why we didn't get there. And you fix that, and then you move on to the next thing. So hopefully, as you go along, you can put systems in place to avoid any of the pitfalls and
Exactly.
grow
Yeah.
that organization. So that, in a nutshell, is how I've done that with all my businesses, and we've been able to grow businesses very quickly.
Mm. Yeah, like I said, just you're scaling it very fast by doing that. Um, as far as like the markets that you're invested in and doing development projects in now, is there any markets outside of your hometown that you're looking at that you expand, and how do you choose those markets when you do select them?
Yeah, so I look for areas that there's demand. So whether it's a residential infill project, or I'll still flip some houses. My wife loves to do those projects. So
Hmm.
I go where the buyers are. I go where the demand is. And if it's a hotel project, well, then you need the drivers for a hotel, right? You need tourism, you need business travelers, you need reasons for people to want to, buy a hotel room. If you're looking at an office, well, you got to have a reason for people to need an office in that area. If you're looking at retail, what are the drivers for that? So when I look at different markets, and it depends on what I'm doing. If it's a hotel, then I go to specific markets looking for those demand drivers for a hotel. And that's kind of what I'm focused on right now, those types of things. If it's multifamily, same kind of thing. Is there income growth? Is there job growth? Is there population growth? What's happening around those areas? A lot of times I like to find urban centers that have a lot of revitalization going on, and then the revitalization around it is going to happen, right? So there's a lot of urban revitalization going on in a lot of the bigger cities all across the country. So what
Hmm.
you do is you look at little pockets around there to support what's going on in those urban centers. So if there's a lot of business and a lot of commerce that's expanding and growing, then they're going to need some lifestyle adaptive reuse type projects around it. I'm sitting across from one right now that's like a town center development where you've got multifamily above, retail, office, restaurants below, with grocery stores and other residual uses around it, right? So we're in a
Hmm.
society today where people still need to buy gas. That's not going away anytime soon. I mean, we're
Yeah.
going to be electric cars here at some point, but at least for the our lifetime, probably they're
Yeah.
going to be gas powered vehicles. So people have to buy gas. You got to buy groceries. You gotta take care of yourself from a medical standpoint. So medical, dental, orthodontists, things like that. You got to educate. You need to buy clothes,
Hmm.
and beyond that, everything else is kind of more luxury driven, right? So if you look at those core services and focus on the growth of those areas where people are and where the population is going, that's kind of how you can choose a market. Um, and it depends on what you're doing. So you can drill that all the way down on a very macro and micro level. So you can go on a macro level and start looking all across the country at the big, primary, secondary, tertiary markets. Then you can go in your own area and you can create a primary, secondary, tertiary market within your own area, even within your own neighborhood. Every
Hmm.
area has its pockets in real estate, right? That are really hot where the demand is. Then they have those outliers that are kind of developing around it. So whatever kind of a market you're looking for whatever kind of product you have, you want to go where the demand is. The old adage of build it and they will come doesn't always hold true. A lot of people think, Richmond, Virginia is just really growing, so I can go 30 miles outside the city. It's only a 30-minute commute and build this neighborhood and everybody's going to come. It
Hmm.
doesn't always work that way. Gas prices can really affect that kind of an outcome. Traffic can really affect that. I mean, there's a lot of things that can affect whether or not somebody's going to make a decision to live 20 to 30 minutes away from where they work. So you really got to look at all of those things. And then every area has its own little demand drivers and has its own little hot pockets. So that's kind of how I approach it.
Hmm. As far as I've been getting a lot of doing a lot of discussions with my investor clients regarding to opportunity zones. Is that
Right.
can you explain a little bit what that is and kind of what are the opportunities there are in this investment opportunity?
Yeah, so that's an easy, for people to go get detailed research on. They can look up opportunity zones, and that's a federal tax program law that was passed back in 2017. So the governors of each state were given the ability to create what's called opportunity zones, and it's supposed to be based on income. So there's supposed to be zones that encourage economic development in lower income areas. Now, the interesting thing about opportunity zones is when you do that, there are some very good areas that are also included in that. So a lot of the projects I have going on right now are in opportunity zones. And the reason is what the opportunity zone does is it encourages investment into lower income areas to help, spur job growth and economic development. So the hotels, specifically the hotel projects I'm working on are in opportunity zones, because not only is it a real estate development, but it's also going to create jobs. So everywhere that I'm at right now with hotels are opportunity zones. So what the opportunity zone does is it gives somebody the ability to take a capital gain, somewhat like a 1031, but much more flexible, much more easier to deploy. So you can take a capital gain, you can put it into an opportunity zone project, and if you keep it in there for 5 years, you get to write off that taxable gain by 10%. If you keep it in there for 7 years, then you get an extra 5%, so you can write down that gain by 15%. And then after 10 years, everything that you earn on that gain is tax free. So if you have $1 million capital gain that you invest in something, and it doesn't have to be equal or like kind, it can be anything, right? As long as the real estate you're investing in is improved to the value of the structure. Okay, so if you buy an existing building you're renovating and it's $1 million valuation and the land is 200 grand, you got to spend 800,000 on the building. If it's land, whatever you build is going to be more than land usually. So normally you don't have to worry about that if it's land. And if it's a business, there's limitations on the business that really don't make it, make much sense. So they're changing some rules regarding investing in businesses in the opportunity zone that'll make that a little bit more attractive. Right now, they're very prohibitive, but in a nutshell, that's what it is. And there's a lot of capital that has been formed in the form of opportunity zone funds. So there's equity funds out there that raise money, and they've been raising them specifically for opportunity zone projects. So they've already created a fund, and that fund will go ahead and invest in the opportunity zone projects. So that's what I am. I'm a conduit for those funds to go into, and I'm putting together very good projects with very good locations. Even though they're opportunity zone projects, they're still in prime locations from a real estate standpoint, and they're great projects on their own. What the opportunity zone does is it makes them really good, right? It makes them a home run. So it adds 5 to 10% to the IRR depending on on the project itself at the end of the day, but they're still very good projects to begin with. So
Wow.
Opportunity zone money is not stupid money. 1031 money can sometimes be stupid money. Opportunity zone money is not, because it's such a long-term thing. Whereas with 1031, you can always roll and just kind of keep going. But I've seen some pretty poor decisions made just because of a 1031 situation. Opportunity zones aren't that way. They're looking for good deals.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm learning more about it as I'm getting a lot of calls, and they're asking me about this, and I'm like, well, let me talk to someone that's really heavily invested in that, because we do a lot of because we also have a brokerage here, and we do a lot of 1031 exchange investments. Like you said, it can turn into stupid money where that time winds down, they end up getting into investment that they particularly wouldn't go into, but the time kind of forced them into. But with this opportunity zone opportunity is that now it's not particularly in. I mean, there's a whole bunch of locations nationwide, but now there's some prime locations that make sense. And then there's like a lot of projects you can look at. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, and you still have a time frame to deploy the capital. I think it's 120 days, but you don't have that 90-day identify 180 to deploy. You've got basically 120 days from the time you realize that gain to put it into something. So there's a little bit more flexibility, because if you have an asset you need to sell, well, you can wait, and kind of time that whole thing, or put it into a fund that's in different zones. But there's also some limitations. So the program expires in 2026. So that means to get the maximum, you can do this anytime up until then, but to get the maximum gain on the benefit of the program, the next couple of years is when you really need to get into it. So if you have clients in that position, it's definitely worth looking into. You can Google that opportunity zone, and there's a map on there that shows you all of the zones in the different states. And then each state has their own little map, usually with their own designated opportunity zones. And there's even rankings where it ranks different zones in different areas, like from an economic standpoint. So like I said, some of the top demographics in the markets are in some of these opportunity zones, and we've gone through and ranked them throughout the Southeast where we're operating. So that's why my focus is I'm on the road every day, because in the opportunity zones, you got to put boots on the ground. It's very difficult to find sites online like LoopNet and these other resources. They're just not all out there. Sometimes there's just a sign in front of a piece of land, or something like that, or it's just a vacant lot. So you got to kind of go look at these zones, figure out where you want to be. So I match I match the zone to the project versus the other way around, right? So you might have a condo developer that says, hey, I'm going to develop condos. I'm just going to go find land, right? So, if I want to be a hotel developer, if I want to develop some hotels, then what I got to do is I know that's what I'm going to do. So then I got to go find the right piece of land for that so that I've got the right drivers, the right location, within the opportunity zone. So it's kind of a reverse, type of thing versus you just go find a piece of land for sale, then figure out what to put on it. It's the other way around. I've already got the use. Now I'm going to go find the best possible place to put it. And the only way you can really do that is you got to be boots on the ground. So that's another reason for focusing pretty much on the Southeast, because I can easily hop in the car and I can be, up through Northern Virginia, Maryland, up in those areas,
Mm-hmm.
all the way down into, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, those areas pretty much in a day or so. If it gets much further than that, then, I've got a partner in South Carolina. He kind of runs up and down that region, and I can always hop on a plane if it's a really compelling site. But you really need boots on the ground for this kind of a thing.
Yeah, that I definitely agree because talking to people when they're looking at all these different pockets of in the region is just like, where do we go? And like I said, you
Yeah.
being on the ground, seeing the land and having that experience in that marketplace is really the key. If you really want to take really good advantage of it and feel really secure about the investment that you're putting into.
Yeah, and by focusing in that region, I know those markets, right? So I can go into, Jacksonville, Florida, and I know where you want to be and where you don't. I can go into Orlando. I can go into, Fort Myers. I can go into Daytona Beach. I can go into Norfolk, Virginia, or, the suburbs of DC, Richmond, Virginia. I know where you want to be and where you don't want to be, especially in those opportunity zones. Because some of them you do have to be careful, that not everything's going to fit in there, right? Whether it's multifamily, whatever it is, storage facilities, anything like that. So, so again, I identify, here's what we want to build. Now let's go find the best spot to put it versus the other way around. Here's this spot. What can we put on it? Now I do some of that too, but that can get a little trickier.
Mm. And as far as and this is the only thing that kind of confused, and apologies if you had probably mentioned, is as far as an existing building and doing kind of like rehab work, is that also covered in that, or is it more focused
Yeah.
on ground up development?
No, those are covered as well. Again, you just have to spend the amount equal to the structure. So whatever you purchase, you can back the land out of that purchase. And then if the structure is valued at $500,000, you have to spend a minimum of $500,000 in order to qualify for that opportunity zone. But I do them. And so just to be clear, I do projects in and out of the opportunity zone. But right now, we're just really focused on opportunity zones because there's so much capital looking for those projects right now.
Mm-hmm.
Good projects.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll do adaptive reuse. I'll do ground up. Whatever makes sense and whatever the demand is.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and we definitely have to talk about some some potential deals that investors that are interested in those, and kind of get you guys connected.
Yeah.
As far as all of the years of experience building 12 businesses, doing so much work in different sectors of real estate and business, are there some mistakes that were made along the way that you learned that you can give tips to our investors and listeners that they can avoid or at least minimize at the very least to become successful and kind of look towards the avenue of success?
Yeah. So, it sounds like I've done a lot, and I guess I have done a lot, but I could have done a lot more had I have focused more on a niche and went bigger earlier, instead of waiting till, this point in my career to go big on bigger projects. So, if somebody really wants to be a developer, really wants to do big things, I say go big as soon as you can, start out from the gate, focus on a niche, and just go with that. So I was in a small market on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, so I was kind of limited to what I could do in that area. And as my awareness grew and as I educated myself and I learned, I kind of went along the way and started doing deals outside the area. And that's how I developed relationships all up and down that Southeast region. And, so my knowledge base was limited because of where I was. I didn't have mentors. The internet wasn't around like it is now. Podcasts weren't a thing. So, there was it was different. So when I started, learning and becoming aware in the early to mid 2000s about, opportunities in apartment building, syndicating, things like that, that's when I started getting into the game and doing things. So I would say for somebody starting out, find somebody who's doing what you want to do, who is where you want to be, doing the kind of projects you want to do. Go to work for them, learn from them, hire them as a mentor, whatever you need to do to fast track yourself and just start doing those big deals now, and focus. Pick something and focus on it. Focus is 100% of the game. If you become the expert in the one area that you're working in and you just, take advantage of that, you can do a lot of stuff really quick. Now, I got to qualify that. If you're in a small market, well, then you have to go broad in terms of the types of asset classes you invest in. But if you expand your market, then you can stay focused on a niche asset. And you can be the go-to person in that asset. So, and there's a lot of people that do that all they do is one asset class. And I've just done a number of things because I was geographically limited. So I kind of had to, and I enjoy doing different things. And for me, it's given me a really broad knowledge base. So I can do anything in any market. But right now I'm very focused on hotels. I like that segment of the market right now. There's not a lot of competition in it. I've done everything but that. In my career, I've torn a lot of them down and redeveloped them, but I've never built any ground up. I've renovated them. So this is a lot of fun for me. I've been learning a lot about it, and I wish I would have started on these, back in the beginning, and I'd be a billionaire right now. So that's really the difference, right? So I've done a few $100 million. I've got over $100 million in the pipeline right now. Had I started this 20, 30 years ago, I mean, it could be billions, and it would be, game over. And but I enjoy doing deals, so I'm never actually going to fully retire. Exactly. And I love to do other things in the community and from a faith-based standpoint that business gives me the opportunity to do. So I'm always going to do a certain number of things, but at some point, we're going to be less able to do things, and you're going to want to travel more and do things like that. So, focus, find somebody who is where you want to be, go to work for them, even if you got to work for them for free, or hire a mentor that's doing what you want to do and have them coach you and help you and lift you up and bring you along, and you'll cut your learning track, and if not in half, by 75%.
Absolutely. So as far as you're doing a lot of work, and you're obviously in the car doing work there. So what does Greg Dickerson do on the little time that you get free? I know you say you do a lot of faith-based stuff, some community-based stuff, but is there any other fun facts that we can learn about you that you can share with us?
Yeah, so I've been a lifelong surfer. So anytime I get a chance, I like to travel. So I'll take time in chunks, and I like to go places. And I've never really spent much time in Europe. When I was in the military, I was in the Western Pacific, so I did all of the countries over there. And then so the last couple of years where I've had time, I've been traveling, and we went to Greece and did Hawaii. We did a mission trip to Mexico. I tell you, if you have a family and you've never done that before, take your family on a mission trip. That's one of the coolest things you can really do. And there's a lot of organizations out there that do that. They provide, mission trips for families, and they're nice accommodations. So when you go on a mission trip, you don't have to stay in a tent in the mud out in the middle of whatever. You can stay in a hotel and then go out and do your thing, come back to a nice hotel and have nice meals, stuff like that. So I do a lot with different nonprofit and ministry organizations that do anything from, like you see the kids in Syria. There's some organizations I work with that are helping those kids in Syria and Africa. There's organizations that go around spreading the gospel, that go around training pastors to open churches, things like that. So those things really fill me and kind of occupy my spare time. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm traveling, and then I've got kids all different ages, so I'm doing stuff with them and things like that. And I don't have much time for golf anymore. There was a time when my kids were young that I played a little bit, but I really don't do much of that. Just outdoors, hiking, surfing, traveling. That's kind of what I like to do.
Awesome. Well, you've given us a tremendous amount of value. I really enjoy talking about, especially the opportunity zone stuff that I'm learning more about, because as it's getting more popular now with investors, and having this frequent conversation with investors about this stuff. So I'm glad that you're able to share your experience and kind of what you're doing and how investors can take advantage of that. How do we get in touch with you? I know as far as opportunity zones and development, especially in your marketplace, I have a lot of investors and listeners that are interested in that marketplace that want to possibly reach out to you. What's the best contact information that we can reach you?
Yeah, so it's gregdickerson.com. That's my website. So all my information's on there, gregdickerson.com. My email's greg@gregdickerson.com. And I answer my phone. It's 888-326-3903. That's my personal cell phone. It's on my website. Like I said, I outsource and leverage. So I've got zero backlog in my life. I've got, plenty of bandwidth. I'm not one of those guys that's, booked from, sun up to sundown and from thing to thing to thing. I use and leverage other people and their systems and technology so that, I'm never pressured. I have zero backlog. I take care of everything right now. My inbox is always clear, and my mailbox is always clear. So one of my sayings is the best time to do anything is right now. So I don't procrastinate. I don't put anything off. I deal with it now. I make the decision now, and I move on. So that really helps. But gregdickerson.com, all my information is there. Opportunity zones are an interesting thing. Everybody's talking about it. Very few projects are happening. We've got 3 right now.
Wow.
So we actually have 3 projects that capital can be placed into right now in the opportunity zones. There's only 1 or 2 others that I know of in the country that have actually broken ground. So we might be like the second or third one out of the gate once we get going.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate your time. I know you're taking a little bit of time out of your day, out of your work day, actually on the road, just to talk to us. I really appreciate it again. Thank you for all of the insight and advice and all of the tips. Look forward to connecting with you again in the future. And again, gregdickerson.com and your phone number, and then we'll reach out to you. But appreciate your time again, and thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it, and happy to join you anytime.
Absolutely. All right, take care.
All right, Dwayne.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes or the listening platform of your choice. Also, please check us out at DwayneLClark.com, as well as find us on Facebook for more useful content and resources.